give you money if you make good grades. If you come in and you're sad, here's a cookie, we'll make you feel better. And so we're taught about gaining, but never in our vocabulary are we taught how to lose something. And so when we do lose something, which it's inevitable in life that we lose things, we don't know how to lose things. And so what I help people do is I help people deal with their loss, and that way they can get past the pain and they can live a productive life again. Because, I mean, grief, when you say what is grief, most people say, well, who died? And the term that we use, or the definition that we use for grief, is it's a loss of familiar pattern of behavior, or it's when we have the end of a relationship.
For me, working in the health field, and being boots on the ground in the health field, and when a loved one passes away, that's grief to me. That's the family coming in, having to deal with losing their aunt, their uncle, their mom, their dad, their brother, their sister. That's grief to me.
Yes.
And the grief that I was taught, this is, nurses are taught this, doctors are taught this, aides are taught this, that where there's the 5 stages of grief that most people know.
Yes.
You have a different take.
I do.
And I'd like to hear your different take on...
The 5 stages of grief were originally published by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote an amazing book about a person dying and the steps that they go through when they have been pronounced a terminal illness. And somewhere along the way, because we are an instant society and we like to be done with stuff, somebody said, hey, wait a minute, here's 5 stages, and I think that's about grief, so let's just assign that to sad people. Well, if you say to somebody who, let's use the aunt, somebody's aunt has died, and you say, okay, what's your first step in the stages of grief? Well, it's denial. And most people, when they have someone who's died, they're not denying that the person has died.
Right.
So the 5 stages of grief do not apply to everyday loss. When I lost my husband back in 1996, he died from a weird blood disorder that we didn't know about. He was 35 years old when he died. It was unexpected. And when he died, I did not deny the fact that he died. I did not get angry over his death, because I had been taught from when I was a little kid that it doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, or how old you are. When your days are up, your days are up. So that didn't make me angry when he died. I was very sad. But the emotions of a death or a loss are like a roller coaster. And a lot of people liken it to when you go to the ocean and you're standing out there in the waves and something knocks you over. If you were not prepared for that wave, it's going to take you under and it's going to tumble you, and you're going to knock your head on a reef underneath there, and you're going to come out and you're not going to know where you are. That's what grief does to you. You wake up one morning and you're in a completely unfamiliar territory. And so when somebody is in grief, we talk about how it affects their health, the symptoms that they have right after, grief it's the normal and natural reaction to a loss. If your aunt dies and you had a great relationship with your aunt, you may feel compelled to start kicking and screaming and crying, but society says, Terry, come on, you're a grown man, you can't do that. So you're going to hold those emotions in. When you hold those emotions in, you may stop eating, or you may eat too much. You may start drinking alcohol and you don't drink alcohol. You may start taking antidepressants because a pill is going to make you feel better. And so that's going to have an effect on your health. So grief does affect your health, because just the normal and natural reaction to a loss, in America, we don't let people feel their emotions like that. We've labeled emotions, either it's a good emotion or a bad emotion, and they're just emotions.
I noticed with grief isn't just the loss of a person or a pet.
No.
You can have grief, loss of a job that you had for so many years, that you either got laid off or it was time to retire. Grief could be your favorite TV show that you liked. That all of a sudden now it's off the air and you grieve about that. There's a lot of aspects growing up, I've learned that.
Yes.
There's a lot of aspects to grief,
Yeah.
not just the death part of grief.
That's right. And it can be a good event. My daughter works for the hospital system, and she worked for many years moving up from coding and billing to being a receptionist to being a referral coordinator, and she worked until she got an office manager position. When she got that position, she said to me, "Why do I feel sad? I just got a promotion. I'm making more money. What's going on?" And I said, "Jessica, grief is the change or the end of a familiar pattern or behavior. When the girls planned their trip to the beach, you couldn't go because you're the boss now. There are certain things that even though it was a good event, that's why you have people who go through postpartum depression. That's why you have brides who after their big wedding, they don't enjoy their honeymoon as much as they think they should because it's a letdown. Because even though they're married, it's the end of an era and they're no longer single."
Yes.
So you're right. There's over 40 different things that happen to people that create those feelings of grief. It's not just death.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that's what we teach. We have an 8-week program. I was certified through the Grief Recovery Institute back in 2015 or 14, and I became what they call a certified grief recovery specialist. And we have an 8-week course that is an action-based plan that moves people from what does society say about grief to what were you taught about grief to how do you handle your grief to what are your losses. And then we pick one of those and we have step-by-step actions that help you complete that one loss. And then you have the tools for the rest of your life to be able to work through every loss that you have had in your life that is significant. And it's an amazing transformation when you see people go from being in acute pain, and usually it's the death of a loved one that brings them to class, but the loss that they work on typically is not the loss that brought them to the class. So it's really interesting. But I love it because I get to see the transformation. Yeah. But there's 6 different classes that we teach. My favorite one is the pet loss class because there are so many people in today's society that have great little dogs like yours. And when you lose an animal, if you're not a pet person, they're going to say, "Why are you feeling so sad? It was just a dog."
Right.
And this class teaches you that if you don't say goodbye in the right way to your pet when it dies or it runs away or you have to give it away because somebody has allergies, then the next time you get a pet, you're not going to be able to love that pet as much because you're going to constantly be comparing it to the previous pet. So the pet loss class is one of my favorites to teach because it gives people who are grieving a pet the dignity and respect that they need to be able to say goodbye to that pet. And I love that class. That's one of my favorites.
That's awesome. I didn't know you offered that. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't think that, especially if you're not a pet lover, they're
Right.
like, "Oh, no. Like, what are you doing?
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you?" It's
Yeah.
like, no, sometimes they're your children.
They are.
They are your child.
They
and
are.
you need to grieve them just
Yes.
like you need to grieve a
Yeah.
family member.
Yeah.
That's...
And another big one that people don't really think about as a grief is when you move.
Yes.
When you move from one house to another, you need to go through and say goodbye to that house. So when you get to your new location, you can start fresh with that house. And so that's another one that people overlook throughout their lives.
I don't think when I moved, I think it was good riddance to bad rubbish. I think that's what that was when I
I love
moved.
that statement.
I think that's what that was. I was like, no, I was like, goodbye, I'm out of here.
That was in a childhood book. What book was that where they said good riddance to bad rubbish? I'm going to have to look that up now because I love
have to look that
one.
up. Yeah, see what there was. But that's really how I felt.
Yeah.
There was no
love loss at all.
No, I think what it was is more, you miss your friends more than you miss the place.
Yes.
I just think because of it wasn't like some sunny beachside Florida resort kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was.
But the thing that is very interesting is when we do group classes, because we do group classes that consist of 8 to 12 people in a group, and then we do one-on-one work where you can do person to person, or you can go and get on the computer and do Zoom and do it anywhere in the world, which those are fun to do because you can help people across the globe, which I love. But when you do the group classes, it's really interesting because the first week people come and they're nervous because they don't know what to expect. Even though we tell them this is not the typical grief session. You're not going to sit around and tell sad stories and not feel any relief. This is an action-based plan. You have homework each week. You're going to take time to learn to listen to your partner because everybody has a partner in that class. But by the second or third week, almost everybody comes in laughing and joking, and they say, everybody thinks I'm crazy because they want to know, why do you enjoy going to a grief class? Because this is, again, just a down-to-earth, practical way to help people through their grief. And it helps people. One of the things that we talk about in week 3 are the STIRBs, which is short-term energy relieving behaviors. I tell people it's also known as coping mechanisms. And when I was, before I did this class, one of my favorite STIRBs was eating potato chips. And I just liked the crunch, crunch, crunch when I was stressed, when I was sad, when I was mad. It was just the crunch, 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 crunch of the potato chips. And it was very interesting because after I worked through several of the losses that I've had, I noticed I stopped doing that. If I did eat potato chips, it was because I made the conscious decision to sit down and eat potato chips. But that's what happens in this class, is you don't recognize that things are dropping off until you look around and say, that's not there anymore. And so I think that's another interesting aspect of this class, is that it takes the weight that you didn't even know was on your shoulders, holding you down health-wise, holding you down emotionally, and it just gives you more space in your soul to be able to live a healthy and productive life.
Well, that's stress. All of that is stress.
Yes.
We all know what stress does to you.
Yes.
Stress is very, very bad.
It
Well,
is.
there's good stress and bad stress, and that stress is bad stress.
It is.
And when you can lift that stress, you always feel lighter.
Oh, yeah.
Like your step's a little lighter.
Yes.
Or like
Yeah.
you said, that weight is lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I didn't know I could feel like this.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's amazing because one of my favorite groups of people to work with are first responders. And I'm working with a woman now to try and get into the next level of working with first responders. But I love working with military people and first responders because that climate is very closed to them sharing their emotions. It's, this is the next call, this is the next call,
Yeah.
that call is over, put it away, put it away. But sometimes the calls are so horrific they can't put it away. And so when I work with the first responders, it's amazing because it gives them the opportunity to be heard. Because that's one of my favorite sayings, is that grievers are not broken. They don't need to be fixed. They need to be listened to with dignity and respect.
Yes.
And so when someone is grieving, you know, people are always asking me, oh, I have to go to this funeral. What do I say? What do I say? And I say, don't say anything. Let them talk. If you feel the need to say anything, just say, I'm sorry. But with the first responders, it gives them the opportunity to be able to tell that story of that horrific event and be able to complete that relationship by doing the 3 action steps that we do for every loss. And then they can say goodbye to that one call. And they go on hundreds, if not thousands of calls a year, but there's always a few that stick out and just haunt them. And those are the ones that we're able to help them with.
When I first became an aide, you know, you're taught, nurses are taught this, CNAs are taught this, EMTs are taught this, doctors are taught this. Like everybody in the health field, we're all taught that you don't get close to them. You don't get close to your patients. You don't try to build that bond with them. You try to be robotic. You can't be robotic. You're a human being. You cannot be robotic. And I remember I was 18, right out of high school, first time being a CNA, working in the nursing home, and got attached.
Yeah.
And she passed. And it hit me hard.
Yeah.
Really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home, and I worked 3 to 11. And my mom was still up when I got home. I was bawling my eyes out. My mom was like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Miss So-and-so died. I can't believe she's gone." My mom's like, "What did they teach you?" I was like, "Well, they told me to be a robot, but I can't be a damn robot." And she's like, "I understand that." She goes, "But what did they teach you?" They taught you how to work through this stuff. She goes, "You've got to remember that." And I was like, yeah, you know, kind of, you know, all, you know, and it got easier. It's never going to be easy. It got easier. You know, it's not going to be like, oh, just shut your emotions off altogether. None of us can do it. We can't. Nurses can't do it. Aides can't do it. EMTs can't do it. Doctors can't do it. People that were overseas in the war and stuff like that, you can't shut that stuff off.
No, but we can say goodbye to it.
And it's not anything like it was. It's just like now it's like a fond memory, but it's also a reminder to not get too attached.
But see, that's the reason you went into the work that you do.
Yeah.
Because you love humans.
Yeah.
And if you look at most nurses, most doctors, most CNAs, everybody gets into that because they want to make a difference in people's lives.
Most everybody. I say most everybody.
But that's the price that you pay. EMTs, firemen, police, they all want to make a difference. And so the people with the biggest hearts are the ones who tend to get hurt because of their personality and how they want to help other people. And that's why I want to be able to be the person to say, here, open this toolbox, be able to use it any chance you can, because this is going to make a difference in your life.
Especially the military. I think everybody that's been in the service and that have went off to war and stuff like that, they've been through it. And they have to process things too. And I think that's I don't know everything about PTSD, but I do feel like that grief and PTSD, they correlate with each other.
Yes, they do.
And if you don't tackle the grief, you can't tackle the PTSD.
I know that there are some instances where you have got to have very intensive counseling. I believe is it EMDR or the you know, and the different tools that are available to help cope with the horribleness of war that people have seen. But I have also worked with military guys, and they have told me after going through 7 weeks, because a one-on-one is 7 rather than 8 weeks, after going through this for 7 weeks, that it has made such a difference in their life. Their families notice the difference, and it has allowed them to be able to live a more productive life. This is a gift for you.
Oh, well, thank you.
That is our logo mug. And the logo, of course, because it's pottery, sometimes it doesn't do everything that it's supposed to, but our logo is a tree of life where there's no leaves on the branches, but the reflection of the water, there's leaves in the reflection, because even when you've experienced a loss and you feel dead, other people can still see life in you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So I just want to let you guys know, the Grief Recovery Institute, like I said earlier, has been in existence since the early 80s. John James is one of the co-founders of it, and he lost his son as an infant, and he was struggling for healing. And so he is the one who came up with the grief recovery method. And it took a few years before they got something formal going, and it's called the Grief Recovery Institute. And you can get certified through the Grief Recovery Institute to become an advanced certified recovery specialist. So since I've been I got my certification, and since I've been teaching, I've had over 180 people go through the course, and I am sending my 4th person to be certified. And a lot of people are like, well, why would you do that? Because that's competition for you. But as part of my dream for my nonprofit, we started Reflections Grief Recovery, and that was a good time of my life. I have a very good friend. I have classes at her law office. Her name is Paula Yost, and she has the Country Law Shack out in Mount Pleasant. And we were talking one day, and I was telling her my big dream about I want to be able to help so many people through their grief. And she said, Luann, you're almost 50. And you can tell that was a couple years ago. And she said, you need to get off your ass and start a nonprofit so you can help more people. So I did. And it's been great because the 4 people that I have that are also certified can help teach, but they're also going to be part of the bigger picture. We have 6 different classes that we offer, and if you are more comfortable with a man, then we have a man that can teach you. One of my girls was married to a police officer, and he died, and so she has the heart for the first responders and the police officers. I also have a gentleman who's going this fall, and he is definitely the first responders. So different segments of society are being touched by us as we teach. One of the things that we're doing this fall that I'm really excited about is our first real fundraiser, because we've never really raised money, and there are some things that we want to be able to do. We want to start being able to offer more scholarships for people who can't afford to take the class. We want to have money in an account to be able to help them fund it. And so we're putting together an upscale pizza event. Out in Mount Pleasant, there is a wood fire brick oven that it's called Fair Meadow Bakes, and they have pizza events out there where they make their handmade dough. Everything is from scratch. And we're going to have vendors there, we're going to have raffles, we're going to have music. It's going to be an awesome event. And I say upscale because when people think of pizza, they think of the versions that you get at most restaurants. And this is amazing pizza that's hand thrown, and their specialty pizza has an egg in the middle of it. And when I first went to pizza night, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not eating pizza with an egg in the middle of it. And when they cut that pizza and then everybody had a slice, they said, okay, everybody, what kind of pizza do you want us to make you? And I'm like, egg pizza. So it's really good. But they are an awesome couple, and we'll have wineries that are going to be there, and it's going to be a wonderful event. People will be able to find out more information about it by going to our lost101.org. Oh, and tickets. Thank you. I have my gallery over here saying, and get tickets. It's a fundraiser. So we're going to limit it to 40 people because it's a small venue, and the tickets will be $50 each. So the first 40 get to be there. So if we have an overwhelming amount of people, then I'll have to see if Pat will do 2 for us. So. There you go. But that's something that we're very excited about. And the classes. We have classes that will be starting on September 9th. We have one that's going to be at the Country Law Shack on Highway 49 between Concord and Mount Pleasant. It's out by the fairgrounds. And the other one will be in Kannapolis. But those are Monday nights. They will be starting at 6 p.m. And I have 5 spots available for the Concord one, and right now I have 11 spots still open for the Kannapolis one. So we have classes that will be starting, and I love it because we will be able to help those people be healthy, or be, I don't want to say pain-free, but have worked through their pain before the holidays.
This isn't just for North Carolina, right? This is the classes and everything you teach for all over.
Yes. The classes, when people come together, those are in North Carolina. If somebody on your podcast is listening in Texas, they can go to griefrecoverymethod.com and find a grief recovery specialist in their area. The grief recovery method is being taught in 34 different countries. But if somebody wanted to work with me individually, then they could find me on loss101.org, and I could work with them over Zoom and do the class with them over Zoom, which is, it's a lot of fun to be able to do that on the computer. Or I work one-on-one with people if they're within driving distance, or they want to come halfway and I meet them halfway, then I do one-on-one with them in person. And that's the really cool thing about this versus going to a grief counselor is we're a lot more flexible. You still get the professionalism of working with someone who is an expert in this field. And I like to think that I bring, like you do to yours, where you have that passion. I like to think, I know that I bring it because I have been through loss and I understand it. One of the things that we say is you never compare losses, because that is, usually people say, what tips do you have for us when somebody has had a loss? One of the things that tops that list is never tell somebody, I know how you feel. Because
no, because you don't.
You don't.
You don't know how I feel. You don't know what I'm going through.
And that's usually the reaction that people get when they say that. It makes the hair on the back of your neck go up, and you get really angry.
It hurts your nerve when people say, like, what do you mean you know what I'm going through? No, you don't.
Yeah. But that's one of the number one things that people say. When, my dad died, your dad died, I know how you feel.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
No.
Because everybody's relationship is so personal. And one of the toughest griefs, or one of the toughest situations to deal with, is when there is a loss in a home of a child, or a loss of a parent where everybody's living together. Because even if we're here as a family, your relationship with that person is completely different than my relationship, and so it makes it tougher to grieve. But I have worked with families before in a class situation, and you always partner them with somebody else because they need to work through that grief personally.
Right.
Because grief is a very personal issue.
Stop popping up on that. Go away.
Oh,
Go away. Go away. No, it just sounded like catch me out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, go away. Go away. Don't do that. Go away.
Yeah. So, but I welcome people that just need to tell me their story, or if they have questions. I do have a contact us, and I have on my microsite, which is just luannstanton.com. They can go and they can set up a 15-minute consultation with me at no cost, and they can pick a time on the calendar, and they can call me and we can talk about any questions they have or any issues that they think they need to work through. I'm always open for that.
Did we plug everything? Yeah. I think we got everything plugged.
I think we did.
You sure?
Yeah.
Want to talk about any of those?
These are the books that we have for the different classes. I brought the Grief Recovery Handbook is the one that we use for most every class. It is, I say it's the generic book on grief, but it's not, because it's an amazing book that will walk you through the steps that you need to take. Again, this is my favorite because it's a book about pet loss. And it doesn't matter if it's a rabbit, a lizard, a dog, horse, cat. I mean, this book is amazing. This one is for people who have been in numerous relationships. I had a girl that came to class one time, and she said, I don't think I fit in here. And I said, why? And she said, well, I didn't have anybody die. But she said, I've been engaged 3 times. And each time when he broke up, it broke my heart, and I didn't understand why. And after she went through this class, she said, now I get it, because the first guy that broke my heart, I've been carrying that baggage into every relationship.
Every grieving is completely different.
Yes.
It's not just one simple thing. It's a whole bunch of different things. Yeah.
But a lot of times people will pattern their behavior the same, expecting different results.
Right.
And so this will help you move past that.
Technically, that's the definition of crazy.
It is.
Doing the
Some
same
people
thing
say
over and over
crazy.
again
We all do.
and expecting a different outcome is the definition of crazy.
This book, When Children Grieve, because I'm not a I don't have my master's in counseling, I don't work with anybody under the age of 18. But children grieve, and a lot of people just gloss over it. I tell people, if you were to close your eyes and go back to your first true love, and mine was, I was 13 years old, and when he broke my heart when I was 14, my mom is like, oh, stop it, there's plenty of fish in the sea. You aren't going to marry him anyways, it wasn't real love. But I guarantee you, when I was 13 years old, it was real love.
Well, it felt real to you, yeah.
Yes, it did. But children, when they are given the opportunity to be able to say goodbye to things, they move past things a lot quicker. So this book is for adults to help children grieve. And it was really interesting. Do I have time to tell a story about how this works?
It's 6:54.
Okay, all right.
It's up to you guys.
You're
Your
fine.
time.
Yeah.
So the best way to tell this is my daughter and her husband inherited a dog. And after 2 weeks, it was clear that the dog was not going to be a good fit for their home. So they had to return the dog. And the 8-year-old granddaughter was very upset because she loved this dog. And so I told Jessica, I said, I'm going to ride with you to take the dog back. So we were driving, it was a 2-hour drive where we had to return the dog. And Aubrey was just sitting in the back, just boo-hooing because she did not want to say goodbye to this dog. And so I was sitting in the front and I said, will you do me a favor? And she said, what? And I said, will you just whisper in baby's ear and tell her everything that you love about her? So you heard her back there just kind of, talking to the dog. And so in a little while she said, okay, Guma. I said that. They call me Guma. And I said, okay, now I want you to tell baby everything that you are sorry for that you may have done to her. If you stepped on her tail, if you didn't feed her, if you forgot to fill her water, just anything that you've done that you need to apologize to her for. And a little while went by and she said, okay, Guma, I did that too. And I said, okay, now if baby has done anything to you, if she bit you, and you need to tell her that you forgive her for certain things. She said, okay. So when I said, okay, now you need to say goodbye to baby. She said, I'm not going to say goodbye to baby. I said, okay, well, when we get to where we're going, you're going to need to say goodbye. She said, okay. So we get there, and of course, she's got her arms around the dog, and she's boo-hooing, and I said, you need to say goodbye to baby. And she's like, okay, goodbye, baby. And we get back in the car, and it's a 2-hour ride back. And about 30 minutes into the ride, I hear this little voice from the back, and she says, Kuma? I said, yes. Do you think Daddy will let me have a hamster? And to me, that was a very simple but clear illustration that this dog that she loved, that she just couldn't say goodbye to, when she went through these action steps and she said goodbye to the dog, it freed her up to be able to want another pet. And I encourage parents to walk their kids through a house if they have to move, or if they change schools, to be able to say goodbye to that school, and just walk them through it verbally, because when you teach kids how to say goodbye to something, they don't grow up to be adults like us where we don't know how to say goodbye to stuff. So if we can catch that younger generation and teach them that, then that would be very helpful for them as they grow up. So When Children Grieve is an amazing book. I've had school counselors go through that. I've had pastors go through that class, and a lot of parents go through that class so they can teach their children how to grieve.
We'll put the books up on our Facebook page.
Okay.
So
all right.
People can.
You can get
check them
them
out.
and on Amazon. You can buy all the books that we have on Amazon. When you take the course with me, whatever book we use, I have them in stock, and it's included in the price of the class.
Okay.
But if anybody wants to read them, and I've had people order them on Amazon and then say, okay, I can't do this on my own. And then I say, okay, you know, and they've started the process, but they need help, which is like anything. If you need a professional to help you, get the help and be done with it. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
No, I've really enjoyed this, and I hope that we have shown that there's a correlation between health and grief, and how by eliminating the pain of that grief, that sometimes it can help you live a much more productive life.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.